Section 1 of The Art of Worldly Wisdom. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Sonia. The Art of Worldly Wisdom by Baltasar Gracian. Translated by Joseph Jacobs. Section 1. To Mrs. G. H. Lewis. Dear Mrs. Lewis, this little book were not worthy of being associated with your name, did it not offer an ideal of life at once refined and practical, cultured yet wisely energetic. Gracian points to noble aims, and proposes, on the whole, no ignoble means of attaining to them. The Spanish Jesuit sees clear, but he looks upward. There is, however, one side of life to which he is entirely blind, as was perhaps natural in an ecclesiastic writing before the age of salons. He nowhere makes mention in his pages of the gracious influence of woman as inspirer and consoler in the battle of life. Permit me to repair this omission by placing your name in the forefront of this English version of his maxims. To those honored with your friendship, this will by itself suffice to recall all the ennobling associations connected with your sex. Believe me, dear Mrs. Lewis, your most sincerely, Joseph Jacobs. Kilburn, 26th of October, 1892. Preface. My attention was first drawn to the Oraculo Manual by Mr. now Sir Mountstuart Grant Duff's admirable article on Baltasar Gracian in the Fortnightly Review of March, 1877. I soon after obtained a copy of Schopenhauer's excellent version, and during a journey in Spain I procured with some difficulty a villainously printed edition of Gracian's work, Barcelona, 1734, Pro Joseph Giralt, which contains the Oraculo Manual towards the end of the first volume, pages 431 to 494. I have translated from this last, referring in the many doubtful places of its text to the first Madrid edition of 1653, the earliest in the British Museum. I have throughout had Schopenhauer's version by my side, and have found it, as Sir Mountstuart Grant Duff says, a most finished piece of work, though I have pointed out in the notes a few cases where he has failed, in my opinion, to give Gracian's meaning completely or correctly. I have little doubt that I am a fellow sinner in this regard. I know no prose style that offers such difficulty to a translator as Gracian's laconic and artificial epigrams. It is not without reason that he has been called the Introducible. The two earlier English versions miss his points time after time, and I found it useless to refer to them. On the other hand, I have ventured to adopt some of Sir Mountstuart Grant Duff's often very happy renderings in the extracts contained in his fortnightly article. I have endeavored to reproduce Gracian's laconism and cultismo in my version, and have even tried to retain his many paronomasias and jingles of similar sound. I may have here and there introduced others of my own to redress the balance for cases where I found it impossible to produce the same effect in English. In such cases I generally give the original in the notes. Wherever possible, I have replaced Spanish proverbs and proverbial phrases by English ones, and have throughout tried to preserve the characteristic rhythm and brevity of the proverb. In short, if I may venture to say so, I have approached my task rather in the spirit of Fitzgerald than of Bohn. The gem on the title, representing a votive offering to Hermes, the god of worldly wisdom, is from a fine paste in the British Museum of the best period of Greek glyptic art. I have to thank Mr. Cecil Smith of that institution for kind advice in the selection. Let me conclude these prefatory words with a piece of advice as oracular as my original. When reading this little book for the first time, read only 50 maxims, and then stop for the day. Joseph Jacobs. Testimonia. Il est si concis, si rompu et si étrangement coupé qu'il semble qu'il ait pris l'obscurité à tâche. Aussi le lecteur a besoin d'en deviner le sens, et souvent, quand il a compris, il trouve qu'il s'est étudié à faire une énigme d'une chose fort commune. F. van Arsens, Voyage d'Espagne, 1667, page 294. Il a beaucoup d'élévation, de subtilité, de force, et même de bon sens. Mais on ne sait le plus souvent ce qu'il veut dire, et il ne le sait pas peut-être lui-même. Quelques-uns de ses ouvrages ne semblent être faits que pour n'être point entendus. Bouhours, Entretien d'artiste et de gène, 1671, page 203. Luisa de Padilla, a lady of great learning and Countess of Aranda, was in like manner angry with the famous Gracian upon his publishing his treatise of the Discreto, wherein she fancied that he had laid open those maxims to common readers which ought only to be reserved for the knowledge of the great. These objections are thought by many of so much weight that they often defend the above-mentioned authors by affirming they have affected such an obscurity in their style and manner of writing, that though every one may read their works, there will be but very few who can comprehend their meaning. The Spectator, No. 379, 1712. En cherchant toujours l'énergie et le sublime, il devient outré et se perd dans les mots. Gracian est au bon moraliste ce que Don Quichotte est au vrai héros. Ils ont l'un et l'autre un faux air de grandeur qui en impose aux sots et qui fait rire les sages. Abbé Desfontaines, 1745. ¿Qué de elogios no se deben al autor del Criticón? En medio de las antítesis, paranomasias y toda la metralla culta, es una de las obras más recomendables de nuestra literatura por la felicidad de la invención, la inagotable riqueza de imaginación y de sales, por la viveza de sus pinturas y por la gracia, soltura y naturalidad del estilo. Don Manuel Silvera, Biblioteca Selecta de Literatura Española, 1819. Si hubiese Gracián procedido con más sobriedad en el uso de estos juegos y conceptos, ¿cuál es el escritor de su tiempo de tantos dotes y caudal nativo para ser el más fecundo y elegante, sabiendo, como lo manifiesto, en dónde estaban las delicadezas y los donaires, esto es, lo amargo, lo dulce, lo picante, lo salado de la lengua castellana? Don Antonio Capmany, Teatro de la Elocuencia Española, tomo 5. The Oraculo Manual has been more used than any other of the author's works. It is intended to be a collection of maxims of general utility, but it exhibits good and bad precepts, sound judgments, and refined sophisms, all confounded together. In this work Gracian has not forgotten to inculcate his practical principles of Jesuitism, to be all things to all men, hacerse a todos, nor to recommend his favourite maxim, to be common in nothing, en nada vulgar, which, in order to be valid, would require a totally different interpretation from that which he has given it. Bauterweg. The person, however, who settled the character of cultismo, and in some respects gave it an air of philosophical pretension, was Baltasar Gracian, a Jesuit of Aragon, who lived between 1601 and 1658, exactly the period when the cultivated style took possession of Spanish prose and rose to its greatest consideration. G. Ticknor, History of Spanish Literature, 3, 222. Dabei ist es das einzige seiner Art und nie ein anderes über denselben Gegenstand geschrieben worden. Denn nur ein Individuum aus der feinsten aller Nationen, der spanischen, konnte es versuchen. Dasselbe lehrt die Kunst, derer alle sich befließigen, und ist daher für jedermann. Besonders aber ist es geeignet, das Handbuch aller derer zu werden, die in der großen Welt leben, ganz vorzüglich aber junger Leute, die ihr Glück darin zu machen bemüht sind, und denen es mit einem Mal und zum Voraus die Belehrung gibt, die sie sonst erst durch lange Erfahrung erhalten. A. Schopenhauer, literarische Notiz vor seiner Übersetzung, 1831, published 1861. Avec beaucoup d'esprit, d'instruction et de facilité, il n'a rien produit qui puisse aujourd'hui soutenir l'examen de la critique la plus impartiale. Puis Busque, Histoire comparée des littératures espagnoles et françaises, 1843, 1, page 559. Gracian aurait pu être un excellent écrivain s'il n'avait pas voulu devenir un écrivain extraordinaire. Doué d'une vaste érudition, d'un esprit fin, d'un talent profond d'observation, il était né pour éclairer son siècle, mais la vanité de devenir novateur corrompit son goût, en le portant à introduire dans la prose ce langage précieux, ces expressions alambiquées que Gongora avait introduits dans les vers. A. de Baca, Bibliothèque des écrivains de la Compagnie de Jésus, 1869. S. V. Gracian. Así como las máximas de Antonio Pérez fueron muy populares entre cortesanos o doctos o ilustrados, así españoles como extranjeros, por aquella delicadeza especial de estilo, las del padre Baltasar Gracián alcanzaron la misma estima por ese atildamiento en el decir, atildamiento que tenía en sí un inexplicable atractivo, y que aunque algo participaba del general culteranismo de la literatura española en aquel siglo, encerraba cierto buen gusto deslumbrador y lisonjero para el lector que sus profundísimos conceptos preciaba con la fuerza de su ingenio aquellos. Don Adolfo de Castro, Obras escogidas de Filosofía, 1873, page 108. Taking the book as a guide, especially for those who intend to enter public life, I have never chanced to meet with anything which seemed to me even distantly to approach it. It would possibly be rather difficult to disprove the thesis that the Spanish nation has produced the best maxims of practical wisdom, the best proverb, the best epitaph, and the best motto in the world. If I had to sustain it, I would point with reference to the first head to the Oraculum Manual. Sir M. E. Grant Duff, on Baltasar Gracian, in Fortnightly Review, March 1877. Some have found light in the sayings of Baltasar Gracian, a Spaniard who flourished at the end of the 17th century. I do not myself find Gracian much of a companion, though some of his aphorisms give a neat turn to a commonplace. J. Morley, on Aphorisms, Studies, 1891, page 86. End of section 1.